I am Larry Hoy, biker writer legend, and this is the First Chapter podcast where I introduce you to some great books and give you their first chapter. Let's get started. This week I've got something great. David Blaylock has sent me a copy of his Velvet Wasp. Oh, David has been in the author game since they were writing on stone tablets. So, David, I can't wait to get into this. Let's have a look at the backside, shall we? The Velvet Wasp. Noted author David H. Blaylock enters the world of new pulp and masked heroes with The Velvet Wasp, a brand new collection of short stories featuring his own pulp heroine. A nightclub entertainer named Aldi Foremost has been found dead, an apparent suicide. Her friend, another entertainer named Diana Green, is convinced that she was murdered and that the Outlander mob is behind it. Known for racketeering and prostitution and money laundering, the Outlanders are run by a man known only as Sir. Diane is unable to convince the police to take on the case and decides to take matters into her own hands. Although she's able to get the goods on the Outlanders, she has to fake her own death to do it. Thus, Diane Green dies, but the Velvet Wasp is born to take flight in 4 adventures, courtesy of David Blaylock and Pro Se Productions. David, I can't wait. Let's get into this. First chapter. Chapter 1. O Death, Where is Thy Sting? The spotlight cut through the blue cigarette smoke haze to illuminate the microphone standing on the little stage of the Angel Club. Behind it, musicians settled into their places below a gaudy banner announcing Happy New Year, 1927. An expectant hush settled over the crowd as Charlene stepped into the glare and the band struck the first chords of Moaning Low. They heard of this new style called torch songs, but Charlene delivered the melancholy lyrics with a sensuality that raised the temperature of the room by 15 degrees. She swayed in time to the music, the light glittering off the green sequined gown to spatter the shards of brightness onto the faces of the rapt audience. She held them and chanted as she sang, her lithe body as much part of the rhythm as the whining brass counterpoint to her breathy voice. By the time the final notes sounded, many of the men in the audience had already fallen in love with the gorgeous redhead. She barely nodded in response to the thunderous applause and graced the room with a tiny flirtatious smile before disappearing from the stage. Since the Volstead Act, the Angel Club kept its reputation by regulating the liquor sales to the back rooms and advertising itself as a social club. That catered to a higher class of clientele, featuring dinner and dancing. The upper crust of Olympic City frequented its tables and protected it from lesser speakeasies. After all, the money and people needed a place to showcase to each other and the public at large. Newspaper reporters and photographers were encouraged to mix with the clientele, as long as it was done in a civilized and respectful manner. Getting barred from the Angel was usually quickly followed by a kick to the curb in the inability to find a job anywhere in Olympic City. Backstage, the Angel Club was a labyrinth of hallways and cul-de-sacs. Charlene made her way around the stagehands, scantily clad dancers, burlesque comedians, and hangers-on. She shouldered her way into the room and plopped down in front of her vanity with a sigh. "Another great number, Diane." Charlene spun in her chair to find Vincent Salvatore, the club's night manager, when the owner, Walter Visson, wasn't around. A tall, lanky man, about 50, dressed in an expensive tux and tails. He stood in the doorway and smiled through his rose-colored cheaters. "Thanks, Saul," Charlene said, turning back to the mirror and examining her makeup. She was used to him using her real name, but it still jarred her to hear it. "They seem to like it." Salvatore shook his head. "Don't be so modest. You're the bee's knees to these jokers." She made a minute adjustment to her coiffure. "For today, maybe. The next month, maybe not." Nah, think positive." She turned to him again. Sal had a way of shuffling his feet when he had bad news, and she could hear the soles scraping on the floor. Was there something you wanted to tell me? His grin disappeared. Yeah, He stopped and cleared his throat nervously. What is it? It's Adelaide. A chill ran down her spine. Adelaide Foremost was her roommate, who worked as a singer in the Angel Club too. They had been friends for years, ever since Adelaide found her bussing tables in a dive downtown and helped her give her a leg up. Adelaide was the closest thing she had to a best friend and mentor. Without her, Diane Green, the hardy farm girl from Texas who spent her childhood hunting and fishing with her father and her brothers, would never have found her way in Olympic City. Adelaide had helped her change her image and soften the hard edges and brought out the female into the open from its hiding place under the calluses. She taught Diane how to walk, talk, and act like a native of Olympus City. If not her, Diane would never have dared stand in front of an audience, never have volunteered beyond her place as a waitress. What about her? What has happened? Sal looked away after that. I'm sorry, Diane, she's dead. She felt the bottom drop out of her stomach. Dead? How? They found her in the alley out back this afternoon. Somebody shot her. My God, she breathed. I thought you'd want to know before the heat got here, Sal went on. The cops? Here? What for? They got a tip you and Andalee had an argument the night before last. She shook her head. Who says? I don't know, he shrugged. I just didn't want the cops to catch you flat-footed. She stared at him and he refused to look her in the eye. Sal, you don't think I had anything to do with this, did you? He shuffled and looked away. No, of course not. I know she was your best friend. Damn right. But she was making eyes at Joey Chisholm the other night. He sounded almost apologetic. She shot upright at that. She and Joey Chisholm had been seeing each other off and on for a couple of months. Many nights, she and Adelaide had sat up talking about what she would do and where they were going. Adelaide had always been straight with her. Sal, how could you think? We might have had words, but Adelaide's no strike breaker, and Joey ain't no umbrella. Okay, he interrupted, waving his surrender. I get it, don't get upset. She strided to the door. I just thought you should hear this all. She scowled at him. Ever since Sal found the hat check girl could sing, he'd been looking for a reason to get rid of her. That dumb Dora was probably working on him for all she was worth. Well, Diane was no cancel stamp. She had a reputation as a first-class songbird. For now, though, it wouldn't do to get in bad with him. She took a breath. Thanks, Sal. I'm sorry I got hot. He gave her a quick smile. It's understandable. If you need anything, I'll let you know, she finished. With a nod, he left her to stare at her reflection in the mirror. Adelaide. Shot. Why? Who'd want her dead? It didn't make any sense. As far as she knew, everybody liked Adelaide. She'd never heard the woman say a cross word about anybody. There had to be a reason. Adelaide was one of the good ones. In a world full of gooks and goons, she was a prize. A knock at the door brought her back. Come in. Two official-looking men in 10-year-old suits and spit-polished shoes entered. The first was about 60, hair parted in the middle and tied just a little too tight in that starched collar. The other man was 20 or so, sporting a brown fedora and an oversized bulge under his arm. She stood and straightened her dress. It didn't take much to figure out who they were. Miss Diane Green? The older man asked. Yes. I'm Captain Shern of the Olympus City Police Department. This is Sergeant Miller. Maybe you have a few moments? She sighed. I guess so. Do you know Angeline Foremost? She was my roommate. The men exchanged a look. The manager just told me what happened, she explained. I see, Sheridan said, barely concealing his disappointment. May I ask where you were at 10 o'clock this morning? He went on, producing a notebook and pencil stub from his coat pocket. Here, I came in to go over my numbers with Vic Anderson. He's the conductor. Sheridan made a note. Anderson. I see. And did you leave at any time between then and now? No, I've been here since. I see, he said, scribbling. He tucked the notebook away. Well, thank you for your time, Miss Green. Please stay close. We have, more questions later. Captain? Yes, Miss Green? Any idea who might have done this? Sheridan eyed her for a moment. We're following several leads. You'll let me know. She was a close friend. The policeman grunted. We'll talk again soon, I'm sure. Good night. The way he said that made Diane shiver. The apartment was small. A little more than 3 rooms, but it felt very empty without Adelaide. Since she moved in, they had redecorated at least half a dozen times. She walked around the place, touching this and that, remembering when they'd put this picture up, and had the table refinished, and reupholstered that chair. Adelaide never spoke about her family as far as Diane knew. There was no one else to mourn her. She was relieved to find out the police didn't need her to identify the body. She wasn't sure she could have stood to see Adelaide lying on a morgue bed. Last time they had spoken was that morning, and she'd left early for work. Adelaide had been fine, in good spirits. There hadn't been anything that she might have warned her that something was wrong. A thought struck her as she went to straighten the apartment and found Adelaide's fur coat on the sofa. What was it doing there? It was her favorite. She never went anywhere without it, especially not to work. A thump startled her. Adelaide's compact had fallen out of the coat. A little tortoiseshell case popped open when it hit. Something glittered in the powder. Several somethings. Reaching down, she picked up the case and scattered the stones. At first, she thought they were rhinestones off one of Adelaide's work outfits, but then she looked closer and saw the stones were too clear, too bright. Diamonds? They were diamonds. 12 of them. High-quality stuff. She was no jeweler, but you didn't have to be to know these were rocks you'd find on some rich fellow's wife or girlfriend. But they weren't the kind of setting. They were loose and hidden in the compact. Why? And where would Adelaide get something like that? Was this why she was killed? Were they stolen? Not that that didn't add up. Adelaide was no thief, but why else would she hide them? More importantly, what was she doing with them? Turn them over to the police? Well, if they knew about the diamonds, they'd have accused her of killing Adelaide for them. The captain, Sheridan, looked like he already wanted her for the job. The phone rang and she jumped. Pouring the stones back into the compact, she picked up the headset. Hello? Nothing on the other end but static. Hello? Who's there? Click. Puzzled, she hung up the phone. Things were just getting stranger and stranger as the night went on. She gathered up the coat and the compact. Maybe a good night's rest would put things in perspective. She set the compact on her bureau, draped the coat over the little chair in the front mirror, and went about getting ready for bed. She dreamed. She was being smothered. A sickly sweet smell filled her senses. After a while she stopped dreaming, and the blanket of darkness overtook her. Waking up took an effort. She felt awful. Her mouth was dry, her head spun. Slowly she struggled to sit up, suppressing nausea. And when she opened her eyes, she nearly gasped in shock. The bedroom looked like it had been ransacked by an angry mob. Clothes were scattered everywhere. Her dresser drawers had been yanked out and broken up. The wardrobe lay on its side, its contents strung around with abandon. She climbed to her feet with difficulty. She had to wait until the place stopped spinning before she could pick her way into the front room. The chaos had not spared it. Even her little kitchen was a shambles. Her dishes were in pieces, and the silverware shards of metal. Someone had gone through a very thorough job of taking her apartment apart. There could have only been one reason. She hurried back to the bedroom. Adelaide's compact wasn't where she left it. She pawed through the debris, but it wasn't until she glanced under the bed she saw it. Somehow, the searchers must have knocked it off the bureau in their haste and missed it. A quick check confirmed the diamonds were still there. She cast about the room, taking in the mess. The searchers hadn't been subtle or careful about their destruction. How did she sleep through this? Well, she must have been drugged. That was the sickly sweet smell. Chloroform? That must have been it. Somebody snuck in while she was asleep and knocked her out. She shuddered. What else had they done? She made a quick check and was immensely relieved to find no evidence of sexual attack. Whoever they were only interested in the diamonds. She jumped at a pounding on the front door. For a terrible moment she thought they were back for more. And then she remembered the thieves don't knock. Taking a deep breath, she gathered her bathrobe over her nightgown and made a half-hearted effort to fix her hair. She walked to the door, pausing with her hand on the knob. She still had the compact in her hand. There wasn't anywhere to put it quickly. There wasn't been so. She tucked it into a fold of the robe. She swallowed and took another deep breath. Who is it? She called. Captain Sheridan. We met last night at the club, came the muffled answer. She pulled the door open to find Sheridan and Miller standing in the hallway. Good morning, Miss Green. I was wondering... He stopped when he caught a glimpse of the state of the room behind her. Come in, she said, stepping aside. I was just about to call. The men carefully made their way into the room as she shut the door. What happened? Sheridan asked. She shook her head. It was this way when I woke up. He cast a critical eye from the room to her. You slept through this? She shrugged. I must have. Who did it? What were they looking for? How in blazes should I know? She replied, peevish. The captain looked around again. Must have been something they wanted bad. She pulled her robe tighter around herself and nodded. She saw the Sergeant Miller walk into the kitchen, and he came out shaking his head. What a mess, he said. He poked around experimentally at the turned-over couch. When do you think this happened? Sheridan asked. Well, she said, I got home just after 2. Everything was fine then. I went to bed about 2:30. I got up just before you came and found this. Sheridan glanced at his pocket watch. I see. Well, had to have been some time while it was still dark. Foot patrol would have noticed something otherwise. So, between 2:30 and 5:30. Plenty of time to toss the place properly, the sergeant noted. And you slept through it all? Sheridan observed, following her. She glanced back at him. He really was an unlikable man. I think they used chloroform. Ah, the captain said, skeptical. He walked to the bedroom and leaned over the pillow. He straightened quickly after a sniff and grunted. Chloroform. You could be right. He scanned the rest of the bedroom and walked carefully back to the front. Your roommate's killed and your apartment is searched. You have any idea what they might have been looking for? She stalled for a moment, looking around. If she told them about the diamonds, they might start thinking she was in on whatever was going on. Until she could get a handle on things, better not let them know. Nothing seems to be missing, best I can tell, but... She said at last. I see, he said, in the tone that annoyed her. Well, we'll send somebody to take your official statement. They started for the door. As they did, a thought occurred to her. They'd come for a reason. She hadn't enough of them for the time being and didn't want them to keep coming back if she could avoid it. Hey, Captain, you didn't come for a social visit. I assume you wanted to talk to me? She prompted them. Sheridan paused in the front door and looked around for a moment before replying. Miss Foremont's handbag was missing when we found her. I just wanted to see if you had seen it. She waved at the mess. I guess it's in here somewhere. Sheridan nodded. Probably. Please let us know if you do find it. She stepped to the door and started to close it. Sheridan grabbed it. Oh, and don't disappear. We might have more questions. Yes, I know. He let go of the door, and it snapped shut. She shot the bolt inside. It was pretty plain Sheridan wasn't going to look any further for Adelaide's killer. He seemed to have fixed on her for some reason. So it was up to her to find the truth. The problem was she had no idea where to start. She righted the sofa after a brief struggle and sank into it with a sigh. Things had become so complicated so quickly. How had it happened? Why had it happened? Adelaide dead. Somebody drugged her? The apartment sacked? For God's sake, diamonds in a compact. It was too much to face right now. She needed some normality to put things into perspective, or she might lose her head. She dressed and headed to the Angel Club. All right, David. I'm loving it. I'm loving the start. Going some noir superhero type of thing. Hey, looking forward to it. And if you're interested, boom, right there, the Velvet Wasp. David's got it on Amazon. And drop him a like, drop him a heads up, and tell him you found it here. Good start, David. Thank you, and I'll catch y'all next week. So that was our first chapter. And I am Larry Hoy, Biker Rider Legend. I invite you, make sure that you reach out and subscribe to the channel. Befriend me on Facebook. Use this name up at the top, Larry Hoy Author. Drop in there. And of course, go visit Amazon and grab my latest book, Demon's Kiss. It's the latest in the Hit World book series, and it is an action adventure that you're not going to be able to put down. And if you're an author and you'd like to get your book out here on First Chapter, please reach out to me. Drop me a line and let me know what you've got to share. I'll talk at you next week. Later.